to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little different than the past ones I've done. Instead of baking today, we're going to just go over some information about flour. And this is part of my baking background series. Now before we jump into the different types of flours, I wanted to go over what flour is. Now the first thing you really have to understand is gluten. And I'm sure you've heard enough about gluten in the past few years, but there are so many people that still don't know what it is. Gluten is a group of proteins found in wheat. That's it. It's that simple. It takes 10 seconds to explain. There's two main proteins that are found in wheat. There is glutenin and gliadin. The gliadin protein is what contributes to allowing the bread to rise while baking. And glutenin gives bread dough its strength and elasticity. Now let's talk about the composition of wheat berries. Wheat berries are made up of three parts. The bran, which is the outer part, makes up about 14.5% of the overall wheat berry. Underneath the bran is the endosperm, and this is about 83% of the wheat berry. And then there's the germ, which is only about 2.5% of the whole wheat berry. And the germ is the sprouting section of the wheat berry. Now, to get flour, the wheat berries are milled. And in most cases, to mill flour, there are two stones, and the wheat berries pass between the two stones and they grind and basically crush the wheat berry to get flour. And now when it comes out of the milling process, it's a whole wheat flour since the bran is still intact. When the bran is removed, it is no longer a whole wheat flour. Another thing you might see associated with flour are the words hard and soft. Hard wheat has a higher gluten content, while soft wheat has a lower gluten content. Hard wheat is better for breads, while soft wheat is better for cakes and cookies. Now onto the exciting part, the different types of flours we're going to be talking about. Yay! I wanted to talk about these flours going from the highest gluten content to the lowest gluten content. So the flour with the highest gluten content is durum flour, also known as semolina flour, and its gluten content is 21 to 24%, which is almost double most of the other ones I'm going to be talking about. Now, durum flour is different than the other flours too because it's not made from the same type of wheat. It's made from durum wheat. Durum wheat is very hard, and so the grinding process takes a toll on it and ruins the starch content. When the starch content is ruined, it reduces its ability to rise and ferment. Durum wheat is also missing a genome, and this missing genome makes it have a better extensibility, meaning that it can stretch farther without breaking, so it's perfect for pasta. After durum comes bread flour. Bread flour has a protein content of 12 to 14%, and it is made from hard wheat. Bread flour is obviously perfect for breads. After bread flour is all-purpose flour. An all-purpose flour's protein content is 8 to 12%, and is usually made from a mix of soft and hard flours. All-purpose flour is used in pastries, and it's very versatile. While we're talking about all-purpose flour, I wanted to mention self-rising flour. And self-rising flour is just a mix of all-purpose flour, baking powder, and salt, and it's really commonly found in British baking. After all-purpose flour, we have pastry flour. Pastry flour's protein content is 8 to 9%, and it is usually a soft wheat. Pastry flour makes pastries more delicate, so it's great in pie crust and cookies. Lastly, we have cake flour, and cake flour's protein content is only about 7 to 8%, which is so much less than durum at 21 to 24%. Cake flour is made from soft wheat, and it is very finely milled. It's best used for cakes, obviously, but cake flour you'll find is almost always bleached, and in a couple minutes I'm going to go over what that means. You're probably wondering where whole wheat flour falls in the spectrum I just listed. And the thing is that whole wheat flour can be soft or hard wheat. You could have a whole wheat pastry flour, you could have a whole wheat bread flour. It just means that the bran is still in the flour. And one more thing I wanted to talk about is rye flour. Rye flour is different than the flours we just talked about. It comes from the ryegrass wheat berry, and its protein content ranges from about 15 to 17%. It's a very heavy flour, so it's usually mixed with another type of flour to lighten it. I wanted to add in here that buckwheat flour isn't actually wheat, it's a seed, so it's gluten-free even though the name has the word wheat in it. So as I mentioned in cake flour, it's usually bleached. Now, bleaching and enriching flour is a pretty controversial subject, definitely if you just happen to Google it. This is the flour that I love to use. King Arthur unbleached all-purpose flour. It has 11.7% protein content, which, as we talked about, that's pretty common. All-purpose flour ranges from 8 to 12%. And then this one I got from Walmart. It's also all-purpose flour, but it's enriched, bleached, and pre-sifted. But this one is bleached. What is bleached flour? I know it sounds scary. Bleached flour is treated with chlorine gas, and it is a very, very small amount. It is not being dropped into bleach and, drained out or something like that. And in cake flour, it actually improves the structure and the crumb of the cake. The bleaching process changes how flour reacts in baking. It takes longer for the proteins to denature during baking, so that gives it more time for the pastry to rise during baking. Another thing with bleaching is that it speeds up flour aging. And flour aging does happen naturally. It's when the flour comes in contact with oxygen, and basically it strengthens the gluten. But when you bleach it, it speeds it up very fast, so you can make more flour and get it out onto shelves much quicker than if it was unbleached. Bleaching softens the flour and makes a softer product with more volume, while unbleached flour gives the product more structure. The reason that you'll see enriched on something that says it's bleached too is that when it's bleached, the nutrients are lost, so they add in more nutrients and minerals to make up for the ones that are lost. The only thing is that usually they don't add the same amount that was originally in it or compared to unbleached flour. Now, over the past few years, I have read many articles about bleached and unbleached flours, and the articles really range from it's fine to it can cause diabetes, and there's not a lot of proof that it's really bad for you. It sounds scary, but for the most part, it's actually not gonna harm you. Personally, I use unbleached flour because I like the flavor more, but I do use bleached flour sometimes, and it does make a difference in cakes. So if you're trying to make a very tender, light cake, use the bleached cake flour. Trust me, it's worth it. I hope you all learned something today. Please hit subscribe, and I'm going to link below the blog post that relates to this video. I am breaking it down and outlining all this information, so if you want to look at it again or read it over, feel free to click on that. I hope you all learned something new today, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.